So now we're going to talk about setting up preferences. And some of you have probably been told a couple of times from me, or maybe we've had discussions of what you're looking for, and you've been told to go to the preference menu. And in this time, I just want to go a little more in depth with the preference menu and kind of explain what all is um, available to you to kind of make it more your own FBS and make it more easy for you to use the program. So under utilities, we have set preferences. Excuse me, and we have a long list of different preferences here. And there's even some preferences that are they're not canned, like these OPT are optional preferences that not everybody would have. There could be additional optional preferences for certain situations based on um, maybe a certain change or enhancement that you've paid for, or different modules that not everybody would have would be optional preferences there to run those. So we'll kind of go over and kind of highlight all of them. There's 145 of them. I can't go through all of them and you remember anything I show you. So I am going to kind of just show and highlight the ones that I feel are the most important on a day-to-day basis for anybody using FBS, but specifically anybody using accounting. I'll touch base on some of the other ones as well, but maybe not as much in depth. So we're just going to start with the AP and AR up at the top. And so this is when you pay an AP entry. So you write your check, the entry would be cleared automatically. Would be cleared with the date of the check, kind of like the check is cleared button. Don't recommend this one, but it can be. You can put that in and put it as a Y in as default. To automatically print the check or default to print the check, it's set to yes right now. You could change that to no, so that when you're running through AP and you want batch print, you would not want it to print, so you want that to default to no to be more helpful to you. Then we have the AR entry is cleared, very similar to AP. The thing that I sometimes do recommend AR is because AR is a check you are depositing. So if you know it's in the bank, you could go ahead and put that as cleared to save your time of going through and clearing that deposit. And then your AR invoice due dates. If when you're writing an AR invoice, they're always um, a set date they're due, like the 30th of the month or the 31st. You could, or 30 days out, you could set that. So if it was always due on the 30th of the month, you put in a -30. Or if it's always due 30 days past the invoice date, you just put a 30. But any number um, for date it's due -1 through 31 would be a valid response. For if you were on, so many days past the invoice date is when it is due, you probably want 30, 60, 90 or something along those lines in there. Okay. The CAIV ones are crop audit inventory valuation, specific to that module, and we would help you set those up if you had that module. CM dashboard to HTML. This is if you have a dashboard module. Email saved to account, saved to home are no longer functioning. The FBS help file, this is only if you're in a network situation. In a network situation, you have to save the help file to the local computer and then tell it where it is saved. So any valid path on the computer would be a valid response for that preference. Labor allocation is used for overhead allocations and and for inventory valuation purposes. Pig wings is no longer valid. The CM push centers and push ledgers, those are if you have intercompany, you do intercompany reporting and you're trying to keep all your accounts the same across everything for reporting purposes. You would put in the initials of the 3 initials of the company you need to push to. So from your master farm, you would set that up. Report size, no longer necessary. This was when we had to worry about pixels. We don't have that issue anymore. Report to clipboard. This is handy a lot of times if you're in a report and you want to go to Excel, you hit F11. So if you want to show the parameters, because like when you print out a report, it has the parameters at the top, tells you the date range and the options picked on the report. If you would like that to also copy to the clipboard, you would want to set this one to yes. And then it would give your parameters and paste that into Excel as well. Um, So if you want to save the printed area, like the columns and rows, you need to save a yes here. For a valid value is yes or no. And this means that if you're saving macros, it will save the column lineup and stuff like that. Scanner delay seconds is no longer used really. Scanner entry types is used if you have scanner interface. C is for check, D is deposit, J is journal entry, R is receivable, and pay is payable. So if what you're setting up here is when you're putting in those entries, do you want to be able to link something to it? If you do, you need to put those initials in there separated by a comma. Scanner file mask is the one I do use quite often in group situations, network situations. What this is saying is that you have a scanner, maybe a lot of people use the scanner, and you want to be able to scan, if you have those big scanners, you can tell where to save it to. You can save it to a file on the network, and then you would tell FBS where to look for those files. You could also maybe just have you have multiple companies and you want to be able to have scans for multiple companies. You might name them differently when you scan them, and we could set that up here at the file path. A valid response would be any file path that you had. So like C colon documents or C colon document slash invoices dot PDF, which means you're going to look for any PDFs in there. And then we find those and pull those in the invoice folder. That one we do use quite a bit. Okay, so CM set screen colors is, you see the screen right here is blue. This tells you this is screen 1, there's screen 2s and screen 3s. If you want those to also be the same color, you would set yes for all screens, or 3 for just main, input, and reports. And no is just the main screen, that would be the color. So you can kind of choose that. We are previous one I talked about this type of user menu. The option 2 is for a list. Option 1 is for images. I do prefer the list instead of images, and that's this user menu over here on the left. Okay. Don't really use these much anymore. User version 2 export or value inventory, or Windows version, those are kind of obsolete. But we do use cache lookback months and cleared lookback months, and this is how many months to look back from the starting date when you're running a report, like a report to find open invoices. So the default is 12. You can go back to 72 months. So you're saying you're in AP and AR. It's going to look back 72 months for any open invoices. Beyond 72 months, it's not going to find them. And that's as far back as you can look. I do recommend keeping your AP and AR lower than that and keep those cleaned up. But you do have that option there. Cleared look back months is talking about checks and deposits instead of the AP and AR. And that's just looking to see if anything is uncleared, how far it looks back for anything uncleared, I guess. And this can go back 12 months. The default is 4, but it will not look further back than 12 months for a cleared entry in any situation. Commercial and purchase isn't one we use very much anymore. It's more obsolete. Cost analysis, drill days, is used for any cost analysis reporting. And just when you drill into it, it lets you drill down by a period, and the option, the default is 365 right now. If you have a crop fuel usage account, you would have to put in a ledger account for that fuel usage, and then it would run that fuel usage calculation like it should. Crop input acres is for crop audit. Crop input by column. Just puts it in columns instead of rows. I think most array runs the columns better, but you can choose that, change it to rows. Project input days. The number of days after you close a project, you can still put in data. So the default is 30, but you can go to 120. Standard shrink, you can put in some standard shrink or other shrink tables there for crops. Crop map import columns is for the crop audit import. We won't touch on that, but if you have that, we do explain how that works. Sorry, I was trying to scroll down here. It's not keep my mouse in there. So we're gonna skip a couple of these. These are some field pictures and import directories. But not many people import anything anymore, but you can set up an import directory. Um, your directory for your save and restore, you can set default here, so it always goes to the same spot. Right now, I think it always defaults to the data folder, but then saves the last location you saved a file to, but you can put in a file path here. So maybe you have, C FBS backups is your save and restore directory. So you would type that in there. Same thing with budgets. You put in what directory you want your budgets. Again, it defaults to the data folder, but you can change that. Disable the input year check. What this is when you change the input year, so going from 22 to 23, if it happened to be that it was already January 23 and you were still in the input year for 2022, this is the warning that comes up and says input year does not match actual date. If you want to turn that off, you would put a yes here, and it would disable that message coming into the program at the start of the year, or at any time really. It's kind of nice to have there. Next, coming on down, excluding inactive accounts. So a lot of times you'll inactivate an account, and when you run reports, though, you still have all your ledger accounts showing up on that yellow box on the right hand side, even your inactive accounts, just so for historical purposes. Well, somebody didn't like that, somebody wanted to remove all those inactive accounts from that list. So you have that possibility here, or that option here to change that and only show actives in those report selections. Look at this: export file destination, export file name, export file type. Those are all pre-selected. You could put in here where you wanted to, where your exports would save, how they were named, and what type they were put in as. A lot of people anymore just use the F11 or save that when they're saving the export, but there is an option to put that in there. We're going to skip the feeding one. That's just for, it goes in columns instead of rows. Hide picture above the menu. You notice we have these pictures up here of the little farm scenes. I could choose to hide that picture. I defaults to no, so it defaults to showing the picture. I could put a Y in here though, and it would take that picture away at the top. There's some, including feeding drill down. Again, if you have feeding that's kind of more specialized, I don't want to take up a lot of time going over modules not everybody uses. But income statement options is one that everybody uses. So this just has to deal with kind of the characters in the heading. Um, if the periods, you have period headings, how you want that to show. That's kind of hard to explain. So if you have any questions and you want to see if we can change those, then we can definitely work with what would be the best headings for you there. Input menu options. This is like, so you show like how many entries. Like I think it defaults to 10. You can change that up to 99. And then that goes in a number sequence there. And there's some other letters here, such as, like, I think it goes like where am I at here? The default is 110E. So what we're saying is 10 entries and you want entry order instead of date order. But you could change that to date order if you wanted to. And then this shows the how many menu pages you have, 1 or 2. Defaults to 1. Maximum printer size on the printer font size, you can set this. You use a report option to calculate font size to get to fit. This will tell you what the maximum is. So a lot of times the default is 12, but maybe if you have a small reports, they take up more space, but you don't want them to go over like 14. You put 14 in there. We'll come down here, minimum printer font size. So how small is the smallest you want to go? This is 7. I find 7 very hard. I would never want a report to print at 7, so I would put 10 in mine. Optional ones, like I said, are for optional modules. There's several other of those. Just keep that in mind. They're there if you have some of our other modules. Paper size orientation, you can have a default to duplex and how many copies you want to print. Green bar report, when you You can have the option to kind of mimic the old dot matrix printers, and it will print like a shaded gray if you have color, a gray if you don't have color, or green if you do have color printer, to make that kind of mimic those old dot matrix printers. Printer font is the font that you want to use on all your reports. It has to be a valid font that is installed on your computer. So you like Arial, Times New Roman, Courier, whatever those might be. You just type that in there. The default printer font size, this is for all reports and everything that the printer prints. You can set that size. Usually this is always controlled by your printer, your actual printer setup, but you can override it by putting in different printer size here, printer font size here. Report menu options. This is if you have tabs or tree. One is a tree, and then two is tabs. I like the tabs, but it makes it cleaner when you have multiple modules, but some people do prefer that tree still. We got some smart breeder ones here we're going to kind of skip over. Just know they're there about style cards and report generating and planning dates. Smart feeder, we have some there for importing and eating and feed ingredients. Won't go real in depth, just know they are there for you to look through. Notice that when I highlight or click or hover over a line, it tells you what the options are. So if you run smart feeders, come in here and kind of look here. It stays up there a lot. It kind of disappears and then come back over here and I'll come back up again. It kind of help you out. And you can always call support if you have a question about those as well. SFIV, Smart Feeder Inventory Valuation. We're still going to kind of skim over those because not everybody uses those. We're going to get down here to the more important ones. Save data options. You can have some defaults in there. They used to always default to being checked. Yes, now they don't, but you can put in some defaults for like setup, accounting, save all years type that. It goes in order here, so there's lots of yeses and nos you can have there. So kind of difficult to get them all in the right order, but you can kind of goes down the left hand side, then down the right hand side, so you can count out your yeses and nos there. Skip the note on batch check reporting. So if you're batch printing and you don't want to have that note pop up every time, you can hit yes, and it will skip that note option. Makes that printing go faster. States in capital letters, default is no. So if you want those in capital letters, you have to put yes in there. If you don't automatically type them in capital letters. Suppress drill tool tip is obsolete. Here, TA some plus, we have some balance sheet. So where it says total assets, you might want to say something else. You could type that in what you want to say instead of total assets. Same with liability, equity, all these headings that show up on the balance sheet. If you don't like those headings, you could type in what you want to show up there. Consolidate cost analysis. Again, that's if you run that. There's some items here that you can set up for your preferences. Check font size. You can set it here. Default is 12, but it can be smaller or bigger. Check layout by farm if you have multiple farms. The default is yes, which means it creates a unique check file for every one of your farms. But if all your farms use the same check layout, you could put no, and then you won't have to worry about them getting out of sync. Check paper bin, I'm not sure that's currently working. Used to be you could say which bin on your computer, on your printer you want to pull a check from. But right now, with the printers and the new interfaces we have with printers, it doesn't work quite as well. Check skip address. So if there's a vendor that's not in setup, if you checked yes, it would not flip through that and ask you to put in an address. Default is no, so now if there is not a vendor, if the vendor you're using isn't in the vendor setup, it will stop there, so you can put in their address. TA check invoice date. So you have standard or you have MDY, DMY, YMD. So month, day, year, day, month, year, month, day. Ours is standard. Checks per page. If you have, like some people get like 3 or 4 checks per page when they print them out. You put how many is normally in there. So, say it's 4, you put a 4 in there. If your page usually has 3, you put a 3 in there. So it knows it can print 3 checks back to back. Delete cleared entries. I hate that this preference is here. You should never be able to delete a cleared entry. If it's cleared, it's past the bank. But we do have the option to do that if you want to set that preference to allow that to happen. Disable AP and AR. Those who do not use AP and AR, they would come in here and put yes for both of these, which means that if you do not put a yes in here and you selected AP and AR when you install the program, then it'll tell you every time AP and AR is disabled, you don't have it set up. To keep that message from popping up, you would come over here and put in yes, and that message would not come up any longer. A drill down recap is if you have a recap by center or ledger, and this is in your TA plus drill down. Entry bank account is a default bank account. So if you have several bank accounts and you have one that's your default, you want it to always, it's not numerically at the top of the list, you can put that one in here. And then it would default to that on checking deposits. Same with division. You can do that same thing right here. TA plus entry type. Pop that up so you can see it. Yeah, so it's what would come up automatically when you hit add. Checks number 1 right now. You could change that if you need to though. Entry is cleared. If you wanted your checks to automatically clear, you would put the default is yes, you would say that. I choose usually no on here because I do not want my entry to clear. So this is normally for me would be an big N. No, I want to clear it when it comes to the bank. Excluding AP and AR, you set up automatic accounts for AP and AR. In theory, those should be excluded from your input list because you don't want to put any entries to the AP and AR, but you can choose no here and then put those on the list. This can cause a lot of issues with your AP and AR ledger accounts if you do that. For the 1099, where you want to save it at, you put that path in here. State ID, you can put your state ID in there when you're writing 1099. Inactive ledgers. We had this earlier. I think it's the same preference we had earlier. Default is this is input. I'm sorry, this is input, not reports. So you don't want to have your ledger inactive accounts listed there as options to put entries into, but you could change that preference and have those show up if you'd like. This invoice layout by farm, we're going to skip this input option. There's a lot here. It's really confusing. There's just multiple options here. And we usually only use it for troubleshooting things, so there's nothing you would really want to set up there unless we told you to. Invoice layout by farm, so we're talking about AP and AR invoices. This saves your invoice by farm. Default is yes, that saves it by farm. If you wanted all your farms to have the same layout, you change that to no. Journal entries cleared, yes or no. Default is yes, it means it automatically clears. You don't have to clear a journal entry, but if you do want to clear journal entries, you change that to no. This is for AP and AR. Automatically print checks. It defaults to not automatically printing checks. So if you always want to print checks, you would put yes. Same with invoices. It defaults to no, but if you want to, you put NY for yes. Protecting amount paid. If yes, then the user can change the date and amount paid. That is the default. You can change it to no. It's back and forth on this situation. Sometimes that amount doesn't clear out always if you're deleting a check that's paid at AP or a deposit that's paid at AR. So you want to be able to change that. So that's why it's set to yes. I could see why you would set that to no. Like, you don't want people messing with that because that can make all kinds of mistakes as well if somebody messes with those. So I can definitely see the option of protecting that amount. Restricting macro types down here. So if you're writing a check, it's only going to show you macro types for checks. You only going to say with deposits or any other entry. Default is no, which means if you click on your macro menu, it's going to bring up macros for everything for you. If you use reversing entries, you need to say what date the reversing entry shows up on in the next month. Is it the 1st or the 20th or the 28th? That's an option. Splitting divisions. I don't think anybody splits divisions anymore. This is for like AR statements. If you want them by farm, there is a special layout you can set up. Default is again yes to have that, just like checks and everything else a little bit ago. Update invoice paid. Default is yes. If it no, then the invoice amount paid is not updated when the payment is deleted. You really want that yes. There's no reason to really have. I'm sure somebody wanted it for no, but let's leave it as yes. A TA plus input stops at the date. This is set to no. The default is no. I prefer this to be yes. My date changes. So right now, if it's no, it will not stop a date. It'll flip on down to your vendor first. So it's like I like that date field there first. These are all for specific reports. We're just going to skip through all those as well, and then you're at the end of the list. So I hope that made sense. I went through it very quickly. We are working on a document that will be distributed, I believe, with that makes these a little more understandable that you can look at before you come into this screen to help you decide what preferences you might need to want to look at and change. So that's kind of went through things fast. Just know there's lots of options here, I guess, and that if you have any questions, you can always contact us here at support.